Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm. Stand therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and as shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace. In all circumstances, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God.
Good morning, new community. Good crowd today. Good to see everyone. Thank you for being here today. I want to welcome you. I want to welcome those online watching this morning. And my name is Brian Lanham. I serve as an elder here at New Community Church. Been around a really long time here and know most of you, but for those that I don't know, welcome. And Pastor Simeon, like Brian said earlier, he's not doing well. In fact, their whole family's kind of under the weather. So please pray for Pastor and his family that they would get rid of all this crud that's going around. So I got a call yesterday about 1:30 in the afternoon. I'm like, bro. He's like, dude. I'm like, I got nothing. He's like, you can do it. And I'm like, okay, I'll try. So give me a little grace today, if you will. I might be a little more dependent on some notes today than normal, but we'll get through this. And it's just a joy anytime we can get together, open God's Word, and seek His truth and how it might apply to our life. So a couple of weeks ago, Pastor Simeon, in this Uplift series that we're doing, he talked about the piece of armor that was the shield of faith. Do you remember that? He had some arrows up here, and he had that big shield, and he talked about how that shield is used to deflect the attacks of the enemy. And man, what a great message. If you hadn't listened to that, you need to go back and listen to that week where he talked about that. Today, I'm gonna talk a little bit more because this is kind of a one-off message. We're gonna let them finish up the Armor of God series over the next couple of weeks. Today, I'm gonna kind of go down a little bit of a rabbit trail, if you will, and I'm gonna talk a little bit more about faith. You know, my wife yesterday described faith like an onion. It has a lot of layers. There's a lot of layers in faith, and it's so important to our life. I mean, obviously, it's the foundation of who we are as believers. Apart from faith, we're not even here. By grace, we've been saved through faith, right? And so it's important for us, I think, especially in today's time, especially in the world that we're living in today, to look at our faith and combine that with the promises of God. How many of you know God has promised us tons of things? This book is full of His promises, and we have to step out and believe those so that they can apply to our life. And so we're going to talk about how those two things overlap today. Hopefully it will uplift you, it will encourage you, and equip you as we go throughout these days. Let's pray, and we'll jump right in. Father, thank you for this day. Man, we love you so much, and we're so grateful to be in your house. We just want to open your word. We want to speak your truth. We want to apply it to our life. God, we want to live a life that brings you glory. Holy Spirit, come here today. On this day of Pentecost, Holy Spirit, come and fill this place. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right. So I'm gonna don't judge me, but I'm going to show you just a little bit about how redneck I am, okay? I'm not some, big city guy, right? I grew up in a small town, and I want to know by a show of hands, how many of you have ever heard of the fishing technique called noodling? All right, I get it. Now, by a show of hands, I want to know how many of you have actually gone noodling. Okay, my hand is high. Now, listen, when I was a young man, don't judge me, what foolish things I did when I was young. I loved to go noodling. Grew up on the lake. I had a neighbor that I just became great friends with, and we became the king of noodlers on Lake Eufaula. We're talking about 35 years ago. And what you do, if you don't know what noodling is, it's hand fishing, right? So in these lakes and rivers, these big catfish, typically flatheads, you can catch some blues every once in a while, but it's typically flatheads. They will dig out a hole in the side of a river bank or under a root ball, or in a lake, they might get under some sort of structure like a piece of concrete or something. They'll take their fins and they'll dig this big hole. And some of these can get huge. I mean, you could get your whole body in them underneath the water. And they get in there and they make a nest, whatnot, and the male and female will both be in there. Well, from the May to June time frame, if you're crazy enough, you can go out and try to find some of these holes. You walk the river, you walk the lake, you search, you find these holes, and then what you do is you stick your hand in that hole. And here's your hope. Your hope is that catfish will bite you. He will grab your hand. And if he grabs your hand, when you're a rookie, you pull your hand out. And when you do that, those teeth just rip the hide off the top of your hand. And then you have the noodling scar. You can go around and show everybody. But as you mature as a noodler, when you stick your hand in there and that catfish grabs you, you just stay still and you grab the fish back. And the fight's on. You pull him out, get him to the bank, get a stringer in him or something, and you catch the fish. The whole point to noodling is that you're grabbing a hold of something that you can't see. And just to prove to you that I was not very smart when I was young, I brought a photo. There you go. I mean, yeah, I can't believe I did that, but I did it all the time. All the time. We would catch 50, 60. The largest fish we ever caught out of the South Canadian River was 72 pounds. It's crazy. But that's what noodling is. And so when I was driving home yesterday and I got that phone call, hey, bro, come on. You got to preach today. I thought, you know what? When we talk about our faith, faith is really about grabbing hold of something that we can't see. In fact, when Simeon was preaching a few weeks ago on faith, we looked at Hebrews 11:1, and I want to put that verse on the screen. It says, this is a definition of faith. It's confidence in what we hope for, and it's assurance about what we do not see. And that's the difference between faith in God and trying to put our faith in something that's in this world, because there's an assurance in what we cannot see. That's the key. You know, God's made a lot of promises in His book, and by faith, we're able to have access to those. And that's good news because, man, I don't know about you, but the world we live in today, we need God's promises. We need to apply them to our life and be able to walk in those promises. Here's the problem with me and with all of us, I think, just a natural human tendency, is that definition of faith doesn't really line up with how we're wired. Grabbing something you can't see? I mean, it's kind of like, who in the world would stick their hand in a catfish hole? And so it's not our natural tendency. We're a touchy-feely kind of society, right? We want tangible things. We want to grab a hold of things. A lot of us in this room have raised children or are in the middle of raising children. How many times have we said, I'll believe it when I see it? You going to clean your room? I'll believe it when I see it, right? Evan, you're just getting started, buddy. You'll believe it when you see it. Because that's how we're wired. And I think sometimes, you know, that verse that Jared talked about earlier, I believe, help my unbelief. It really plays to our natural tendencies. And that is that we want to have our hands on it. That's why I have a hard time with this cryptocurrency stuff. I don't understand it. Spend money for something I can't grab a hold of? I can't do that. But you know what? Scripturally, spiritually, the definition of faith is just that. It's the assurance about what we cannot see. And so we have to reach out and grab that. We have to possess that. We have to let that type of faith, because of that assurance of God, grow in us. Otherwise, we'll be chasing those natural tendencies to fulfill a lot of things in our life, and none of those things are going to be eternal. I was looking through the ESV Bible last night and was looking at this verse in Hebrews, and down in the study notes, it talked a little further about breaking that verse down. And here's what it said. I just want to share it with you. It says, faith is really a settled confidence. Listen to this. That something in the future, something that's not yet seen, okay, but has been promised by God, will actually come to pass. That's faith. That's faith. Because God is going to bring it about. Not anyone, not any situation, but God. So today I want to look at 3 promises of God that I think are really important in the times that we're in right now in this world. And hopefully it will encourage us and uplift us to be able to live a life that God has for us. So we want to look at this first promise, and really, it is so practical for today. But God promises to be our provider. And I'm sorry that, hey, Chad, you are a stud. Give it up to the guys in the back, because I had no slides. Thank you very much. God promises to be our provider. So talk about the elephant in the room for a minute. Has anybody been to a gas station in the last couple of months? Goodness gracious. I have a truck. It's got an oversized tank on it, but still, I filled up last weekend. Get this, $138. Did you know the gas pump stops at $100? I'm finding out things I should not find out. I had to hang it up and do a whole nother transaction to keep going. You can't do that without thinking about how it impacts you financially. Inflation, food prices, food shortages, whatever it may be. Maybe you've been in a time of need or lack for a while. But here's the promise. God is a provider. What's our natural tendency, though? Our natural tendency is to fix it ourselves. That's what we want to do. We just want to forget this stuff. I'm going to read you next weekend. I'm going to go fix this. And hey, I'm right there. But you know what? There's a responsibility on our part, but God has a promise. And His promise is to be a provider. And we have to reach out and grab hold of that, even if we can't see it, and walk in that faith. Matthew 6, verses 25 through 33, and a lot of these I won't have on the screen, but you can read these later. Matthew 6, 25 through 33 really does a good job, I think, of describing the promise of being a provider really well. And I'll just summarize it for you. This is the verses where, if you'll remember, he talks about, God takes care of the sparrows. He feeds them. He takes care of the grass in the field. He clothes them. If He does that, how much more is He going to provide for you and me? How much more is He going to take care of us? And then the last verse in that, in 33, it says that if we seek Him and His righteousness, if we grab hold of Him, of the promise, listen, all these things will be provided to us. That's His promise. And that's good news, because I'm telling you, when we try to do things on our own, it usually leads to frustration. It leads to stress. And we find ourselves at the end of the day probably not much better off than we started. Sometimes even worse. Now, it doesn't excuse us from our responsibilities, right? I mean, we can't lay on our backs on the sidewalk with our mouth open and be fed like a bird. We have to take responsibility. We have to work hard. We have to do the things responsibly. We have to be disciplined. We have to have a budget. We have to pray. But God's going to provide. God's going to provide. Look at this verse in Psalm 37. It'll be on your screen. Verse 25, chapter 37, verse 25. This is David. He's saying, I was young and now I'm old, so I've lived my life. And through all of those experiences, he said, I've never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging for bread. He said, look, to those who seek the Lord and put their faith in him, they will not be forsaken. That's the promise. That's the truth. In the Old Testament, our God is described with a name, Jehovah Jireh. We've talked about that in here before. And that literally means God will provide. God will provide. That's his promise. And we have to grab a hold of that, even if we can't see it. Second promise I want to look at today, and I think is so important in where we are in this world, is God promises to fill us with hope. Do you think this world needs a little hope today? I mean, goodness gracious. It just breaks your heart seeing all the things that are going on, especially the last couple of weeks. And I can't help but believe that the person or people that have done these things, they're absolutely void of hope. I believe if they would have had a glimmer of hope in their soul that they wouldn't have done these things. They reached the end where they thought there was, it was it. They could see no way out. And there might be folks in a room this big with this many people. I'm sure there's people here today who find themselves in situations where it feels hopeless. Whatever it may be. We've all been there in different levels. I don't intend to lump everybody's problems together, just guess they're all unique. But we've all been at a place in our life where it's felt hopeless. And what do? What's our natural tendency with this? Our human natural tendency is to try to find hope in someone or something else. We do it all the time. And I can tell you, all the inhabitants of this earth, there's not a single one of them that can give you a hope that's eternal. You know why? Because none of us are perfect. As much as I love my wife, I wouldn't be here without her. She encourages me so much. But she and I both know that we're human. And unintentionally, we're going to say something that's not right, or we're going to do something that's not right because we're not perfect. There's only one that's perfect. And he said, I'm going to fill you with hope eternal. So when we try to find that hope somewhere else, we might find it for a moment, but it won't last. It won't last. Here's the good news. God's made a promise, one that we can't necessarily see, perhaps in our situation, but we've got to believe in the assurance of what we cannot see. Remember that definition. He will fill us with hope. Romans 15:13. This is a verse that's kind of fresh on my heart. Jackie had us an Aunt Dee, who over the last couple of months, she lost her husband and she lost her son. Where do you find hope in that? Right? And this verse was a verse that was put on our heart because her family looks to her as a pillar of strength. And so she has a lot of responsibility. And so this verse was something that we shared with her to try to just encourage her. But listen to this, Romans 15:13. It says, may the God of hope, and we could stop right there, the God of hope. That's who our God is. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, as you have faith in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Man, that's good. That's good, because the good news is there's really there's really, it's a two-prong approach here. One, you're going to be filled with hope by the promise of God if you trust in Him. And He's going to fill you up. Remember we had that overflow series a while back? He's going to fill you up so much that you're going to overflow. And we know that when things overflow, it gets on other people. And so that hope that you allow God to fill you with is going to overflow you and get on those around you. And that's the good news. That's the good news of Jesus. Now, I want you to think about something that this verse did not say. It says, may the God of hope fill you. It did not say, may the government fill you with hope. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. It doesn't say Biden's going to fill you with hope. It doesn't say Trump's going to fill you with hope. Because guess what? They're not. And man, this world, we're just so tangled up, and I'm not going to get into politics, but what it is people are looking for hope in places they're not going to get it. There's one place we get our eternal hope, and that's from God Almighty. We can't rely on any system, on any government, although there's great tools out there, but we can't rely on books. We can't rely on talk show hosts or whatever we turn to. We have to turn to God. We have to turn to the one that's perfect. There's a great verse that everybody has probably on their icebox or on their desk or whatever that's very popular, but I think it's worthy for today, and it's going to be on the screen. Jeremiah 29:11. We all know this. It says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Those are the plans that we want. We want the plans that the Lord has for us. They're plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. So in order for us to find that lasting, eternal hope, this is God's promise, and we have access to that promise for our life. That's the good news of the day. Man, we need it. Don't we need it? The world needs it. We need to share it with the world because there's no times like, goodness, the times we're in now just seems like a mess, but God's in control. Let's trust in Him. Let's trust in Him. And then the last promise I want to talk about today is God's promise for contentment, or another way to put that, rest for our soul. You know how it is if you're not content, you're just always looking for what's next. You're always just feeling this anxious, fidgety, empty feeling where it's just, man, I just have to have contentment. And so I'm going to try to do that on my own. Do you think Americans as a whole walk around content? Talking to Brian. Come on, Brian, be content. We don't. We always want more, more, more. Whether it's whatever it is for you. If you fill in that blank, we've all said it before. If I could only whatever. What you fill it in. You've been there. If I could only get that job, or if I could only have that relationship, or if I could only, I would be done. I'd be great. My life would be complete. I'd be content. But we all know in here, because we've lived life long enough, it doesn't work, does it? Might work for a little while, but then we are looking for the next. We've all been there. We've all bought the new TV. Now, I don't know, maybe we can excuse TVs. But we've bought the new car or whatever. We've tried. But then it gets kind of dangerous, right? Because people start looking for the new relationship. They start looking for the next fix. They start getting in maybe to drugs or addictions, trying to find something to fill the void. that we all have. Why is that? Why is that? What is that void? I think if we look at Ecclesiastes 3, verse 11, it's right in the middle of that verse. Listen to this. God has set eternity in the human heart. Think about that for a second. God created us as eternal beings. He set eternity on our heart. Man, we are out of our habitat in this world. This is not our home. So we have something within us because the way God created us that just wants more, so much more than this life. And you know what? That's okay. That can be a healthy thing. It can cause us to pursue God in an amazing way, knowing what's to come. But as the enemy often does, he can take that and twist it in our life, and that's what we see a lot in this world. We see people try to fill that void with everything but God. And man, that's not the promise. God's promise is that He's going to bring us rest. He's going to bring us contentment. You know, when I was a young man, when I was a snot-nosed kid in junior high, I wasn't a young man. 7th, 8th grade, I don't remember, but I went to a little rural school down south of Eufaula, a little town called Canadian. Maybe you've heard of it. I got a great golf course. But this little school, there's like 22 kids in my graduating class. But when I was in junior high, the only thing we had there, we didn't have any sports except basketball. That was it. So you didn't play basketball, you didn't do anything. But I played, you showed a pig, but you either showed a pig or played basketball. That's what you do. So I did both. But I remember, this would have been in the 70s. Remember, back then, the only basketball shoe you had was what? The Converse, baby. And they were canvas Converse. Now, they're making a big comeback. Everybody's got them again. But I had the canvas Converse, but that year, they came out with a leather Converse. All leather. And man, I was dying to have a pair of those. Now, my mom and dad didn't have much. They took great care of us, but, it wasn't like we had a lot. But I somehow talked my mother into taking me to town, into Eufaula, going to one store that was there that had shoes. And lo and behold, there was a pair of leather Converse sitting on the shelf. I couldn't believe it. There's one problem. Back then, I'm like a size 8, I don't know. These are like a size 10. They're 2 sizes too big, and it was the smallest size they had. And I don't know how I did it, but I convinced my mother to buy me those shoes that were 2 sizes too big. And I thought, if I just had those shoes, my soul could find peace. So I got them. I think my mom knew. I think it was a lesson, a learning time. So the next week I go to camp, basketball camp. Play the first full day in those shoes. You know what happened? At the end of that day, both my feet were just a solid blister. And what I thought would bring me all of this satisfaction and joy and contentment, you know what it ended up doing? It really ended up bringing me a lot of pain. And we see that in life over and over and over again. People fill their life with things that they feel are going to bring them the contentment and peace of their soul, and it ends up just causing more pain. That's not how God intended it. Let me start to close with this. God made us a promise that we'll find contentment in Him. In the book of Philippians, we see Paul. It's in the 4th chapter. You can go back there and read that. But Paul talks about finding the secret of contentment. In fact, that's what he says. I know the secret. Well, come on, tell us. What is it? He says, look, I've lived a life that has been through it all. I've been through valleys. I've been through to the mountaintop. I've had little, I've had a lot. And through it all, I've learned to be content. And the secret is because it's not me, but it's the strength of Christ within me. As long as my faith is in Him and in His promises, I can be content in any and all situations. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things. I can get through all things. I can handle all things through Christ who gives me strength. And that's the secret. That's the secret. See, our soul, we're created for eternity. And so that's why we find this world to be so short, so inadequate. So our faith has to be in the promise of God that He will bring us contentment. There's a verse in Psalms 107. It's going to be on the screen. Man, this verse just really touched me last night as I was looking at it, because it just brings a sense of peace, or at least it did to me. It says, "For He satisfies the longing soul, and the hungry soul He fills with good things." That's God's promise. Good things, not temporary things, eternal things. It says in 2 Corinthians 4:18 that what we see is temporary, and what is unseen is eternal. God's promises, they're true. They're true, and we need them now more than ever. He can be our provider. He can take care of our every need. He can be a God that fills us with hope if we'll trust in Him, even when we can't see it. And He will be the God that brings peace to our soul, bring contentment to our life. Our faith needs to be strong. I just finished a book by a guy named Kyle Idleman. We study a lot of his stuff in our small group. But I don't recommend a lot of books, but I highly recommend this book by Kyle Idleman. It's called Don't Give Up. He talks in there about faith, and he does a really good job of taking you through all aspects of not giving up. And he challenges you. It's not just a self-help book. It really challenges you as well. But one of the things he says about faith is, he said, faith without risk, is it really faith? And then he asks this question, and I want to ask it to you so we can all ponder it together. Are you following God in a way that requires faith? Man, I hope that we are. I hope that I am. Because here's the thing, if we're doing that, His promises will come to pass. They will. They're true for us. They're there for us. And so, church, as we go through our week, as we get back out into our lives, man, I hope that you will allow God, that your faith will be such that you can grab hold of what you can't see, because you're assured that it is God who is your provider. He brings you hope. He'll bring you rest and contentment. So let's pray. Father, we are so, so grateful for your word and the promises that you have given us through it. God, I pray that we reach out and we grab those, that our faith is strong, that even though we can't see it, that we would get beyond our natural tendencies of just not believing something we can't see, God, because our faith is in you. And it says our assurance is in you. And that your promises will not fail. God, we're so thankful for that. For anyone in this room today who might have walked in here just in need, or walked in here and just what they felt like was a hopeless situation, the good news, the uplifting news for you today is that God has a promise for you, and it will not fail. It will not fail. We love you. Holy Spirit, thank you. It's in Jesus' name. Amen.